seconds. There we go. My goodness, I keep doing that. Welcome, everybody, to Star Trek New Worlds. It's a couple seconds early on the clock, the countdown timer, that is. But nonetheless, welcome here to our live stream. If you're joining us live, thank you so much for taking the time. And if you're catching us on the replay, well, I hope this is something you will find so much fun to watch. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about is this the end? Is this the end of the Romulan Empire? Well, we'll see. War is upon us, and the battles, they are many. We're going to talk about at least one of them and highlight a rule that came into significant effect in stereo sound, so to speak, when it came to this particular battle. We're going to talk about the hubs of Scum and Villainy, Orion Pirates, as they are entering the fray. And of course, we're going to start off with the Turn 50 reveal. There's a lot of things about Turn 50 that are significant. We'll touch on at least one as we get going here. But before we get started, you're probably wondering, what in the world is Star Trek New Worlds? Well, if you're brand new and that is a question on your mind, then we are a turn-based strategy game that we play online here live with you on YouTube, Facebook Live, and on Twitch. We do this playing using the rule set of Federation and Empire as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau, and we use the platform Vassal to be able to present this for you, as you will see in a moment. This is something we do online for you for fun, and our objective here is just to create a community of players who enjoy turn-based strategy, or just strategy in general, all things sci-fi, specifically in this case Trek, and just enjoy having fun with us as we go through the evolving story and narrative of this campaign. Technically, it's just a war game, but I mean, we do add in some RP elements and see how things go on that front. So it'll be really interesting to see how certain story elements add or subtract to the narrative of the war that's happening as we go on. Already, our folks in the chat are getting excited and certainly can talk to some of these story elements. But let's go straight into it right now. I want to welcome Max Zink, brand new attendee, so to speak, to the live stream. Thank you so much for joining us. But let's go around the clock and say hello to all of our in-game regulars. We have Jim, the tentacular tripedal triplicate. Wow, okay. The Hydran player in attendance. Bill, the Gorn commander. Smiticus Rex in the house. For some reason, I'm having Balls of Fury, the German ping pong player, is coming to mind when I hear that. That's what I think of. Paul Williams in the house. Hello. And of course, we've got our GM, Daniel, who is talking about the exciting turn that we just had. So a very exciting turn, very interested to see what happened. But okay. So a couple little housekeeping things as we go forward. So before we jump in here, you may have noticed that there was some slight changes to the channel art on YouTube. A couple other things have happened as well. You will notice, of course, down in the corner, on the opposite side, there we go. Down on the corner, we've got our coffee link. So if you are feeling in mind to be able to support the caffeination of this host and this channel, then please feel free to go to that link and throw us a coffee or two, if that's up to you. And I mentioned coffee because our Patreon, which we have a Patreon, you can see on our page. It's on our YouTube page, is on the corner there. It had not been getting a lot of attention, and so not a lot of love and attention. That changed as of earlier this week. I noticed that we do have some patrons on our Patreon, so they had not been getting the heat and the light of the warm affection that we need to be able to give our supporters like you. So what have I done? We've changed that up so that the Patreon tiers match up with the coffee tiers. And so 6 of one, half a dozen of another. You pick your preference, your poison, whether it's Patreon or coffee. Either way, your support for this channel is greatly appreciated. It helps keep us caffeinated. It helps keeps us going and those creative juices flowing as we kind of work through our way here. But without any further ado, I want to jump into the turn that is turn 50. Now, before we sort of dive in, a couple little things I want to talk about. We're going to go over the west side of the map, west side story, you might say, to begin this turn reveal. But once we get to the east side, we're going to talk about the Lower East Side and the beginning of the battle between the Romulans and the Klingons. We're going to go over a specific rule that is currently being employed that was used to great effect this past turn, and I want to highlight it so we all understand what happened, how it works, and allow all the other players the ability, the flexibility to be able to use this in turns going forward. As well, just to be able to. You know what? I totally lost track of what I was about to say. So without further ado, let's just jump into the West Side story here on the map. All right. So as you can see, when you hit that coffee link just above my head, there'll be a phaser photon fire up on the screen, and you'll get a quick feedback and a message to let you know that your support has been received. All right, let's do a quick round the clock here, again with our 50s music reference, round the clock to be able to check in on how things are doing. Let's start with the EP, which of course is showing up just off the map. There we go. So ignore the Carnivon. Let's talk about the Federation. Federation is at 32 EP. $32 a turn is what they're making. The Lyrans are at 31.5, and the Tholians. This is so interesting. The Tholians are at 38. Yeah, okay. I'm seeing this for the first time, just like you. So you'll roll with me here as I get sort of amused with what's going on. Okay, so 38, 31.5, and 32. So that's good. Really good to see that the sort of the EP curve is tracking. And of course, the Tholians maintaining their ridiculous, monstrous lead. But we'll get into why that is in a moment. Let's zoom in here and we'll focus in on the Lyrans. So much exciting stuff is about to happen with the Lyrans, but let's go to their compot to start things off. Or not compot, their fleet cap, excuse me. All right, so fleet cap, we have the Federation at 22 ship equivalents with a 60-99 split. That's pretty good. But again, their overall fleet numbers are low relative to sort of the galactic average, we'll call it. We have the Lyrans with 35 ship equivalents with a 76-159 split. What's particularly interesting about that is, although the number 35 is pretty good, the 76-159. So the Federation only has 22 ships, but they're within 16 point spitting distance of the attack factors of the Lyrans. But that's a lot. I mean, that's a 12 ship difference. 13 ship difference. I'm quite surprised that is, the delta, the difference there. I think it's just because, of course, the Feds have so much attack factors in those cruisers that they have, but it'll be interesting to see as the Federation grows and the Lyrans continue what they're doing, how that balances out. As you can see on the map here, I don't see big naval forces building up on the border, so I think they'll be fine. The Tholians, however, are at 36 ship equivalents, which, again, par for the course for the West Side story. But they have a 51-33 split. Now, what I find particularly interesting about that is not only, of course, that we know the Tholians don't have great attack factors at this stage of the game, but they have, again, 14 more ships than the Federation, but they're getting close now between the Federation's sort of attack potential, their combat potential versus the Tholians. So there's a little more equity, a little more balance there between the two of them. And of course, as we just saw, the Tholians have a mammoth economic advantage. So let's just take a quick look at the Tholian, sort of what they're doing here. So as we talked about in the last live stream, the Lyrans are really focusing on, it seems like the Lyrans are focusing on their exploration and expansion at this phase of the game. You can see this happening in the northeast of their map. You have, all their YSRs, which are their survey ships, and a survey freighter up here, just pushing to the northeast. They're like pushing to the top of the map, and that's very interesting to see. Also, we can see that we've got some, we'll call them task groups. So I'll heavy cruiser, light cruiser, and a frigate over at this base station, and a cruiser over here. I have a feeling that the Lyrans are going to use this cruiser with a prime team. We've discussed this before. Cruisers with prime teams are a sort of budget-friendly option for exploration, as they have better than chances of exploring as a small exploration freighter. So, very interesting to see that. We can see here that, oh, that's interesting, a YDT. Now, I don't know off the top of my head what a YDT is. It makes me think it's a drone bombardment ship, but I don't know what that U means. Maybe I can get an answer from the GM. Maybe the GM knows what that U means. Or any of you other Federation Empire experienced players, what does the U mean on the counter? I'm going to have to look that up after this is done, and so maybe I'll tell you in the next live stream. But we can see they've got a YDT. I want to say it's a troop or a theater transport. Theater transports are like mini tugs. They can carry more EP or more money than the average, obviously the average ship, but they're not quite as effective as a tug. In later ports in the game, you can use as many as 3 theater transports to do some tug missions, such as doing repairs and supply and things like that. They can't do everything that a tug can do. They're not an all dancing, all singing option, but because they're small, relatively low cost to produce, you can create them, build them, and then deploy them. They're a more cost-effective option to be able to get some tug features and functionality without spending all the money on a tug. Also, there is a limitation on how many tugs you can build in any sort of 2-turn period or 1 year. And the theater transports don't fall under that restriction. So you can build as many theater transports as you have slipways to build them, and it gives you that same kind of capacity. Yes, Charles is saying, you means it is a theater transport that can do some tug missions. Yes. That is exactly what I'm saying. Hey, Dale Davis. Dale, welcome to the show. Oh, and you know what? At the very top of the show, I forgot to acknowledge our latest subscriber, James McCormick. Thank you, James, for joining us and being a subscriber on the channel. We are currently at 179 subscribers, which is all part of our journey to 500. Why the number 500? 500 because, and let me switch over so you can see the chat here. The number 500 because 500 opens up features within YouTube for us, allowing us to be able to make community posts and manage the community overall. It just allows us another way to be able to engage with you, provide you value, and add those posts. Also, it's all about, this sort of steady progression in building this community, building out a group of people who enjoy having fun, playing these strategy games, all things Trek and sci-fi, and just really creating a community around the fun that we like to have on this game. But with that said, let me get right back to the Lyrans. So other than that, not much else to sort of like comment on. We've got the theater transports here. We'll discuss sort of the Lyran interaction with the Remans, which will be coming at some point in the future. But let's take a look at Home Fleet real quick. And we can see here, once my mouse decides to play nice, so we got a YCA, a WCA, so Y and W era cruisers, frigates, and, a troop transport. Interesting. Okay, so why troop transports? Well, when we're doing assaults against planets or anywhere that has a planetary ground base, and we discussed this a little bit in some of the previous live streams, G factors or ground troops are highly effective at being able to take out those ground bases. The ground bases are a huge hurdle when it comes to dealing with a battle over something like that, a planet or a place where a location that has these planetary ground bases, because every planetary ground base brings with it EW or electronic warfare factors that help change the sort of the calculations of the combat. And the more you have, obviously, they also have their own attack and defense factors, which are added to the compot. And one of the big things that one of the big advantages they have beyond EW is the fact that they don't count against your command rating. You could have 10 ground bases, if you could support that, on a planet, and they don't count against the command factor, the total number of ships you can have in the attacking force. They're basically free attack factors you can throw into the mix, which just causes, of course, more damage to the enemy that you're defending from. So very interesting to see that sort of evolve. Yeah. I wonder what they're planning, those Lyrans. Sneaky. All right, well, let's take a look here. Again, when it comes to the research and development over the wormhole, we are seeing this evolve. We can see the Bloodstar fleet. I wonder what's in the Bloodstar fleet. Can I even find it here? My goodness. That's one of the things about Vassal. Vassal is not necessarily great for this, this kind of... There we are, Bloodstar fleet. It's very sort of Windows-based. You know, it's got those drop-down menus and various things. All right, so Bloodstar is a bunch of destroyers, 3 of them, to be clear. And, of course, we have the Apex and Farstar's fleets. Oh, and Doomstar as well. So fleets that are building up around sort of, I guess, defending against this potential whatever might come through that wormhole. And, of course, you have fleets that are sort of in close proximity to the border with the Federation, just in case the Feds change their mind and decide to get a little rowdy. But let's talk about the Federation ever so quickly. Let's head down here and slide this counter over so we can take a look at their space. So as you can see here, it's maybe a little more difficult to see. There is a concerted effort by the Federation to explore and sort of push out their borders. You can see that happening along the eastern fringe here. Also, of course, as we take away the ships for a second, you can see that they're building and reinforcing their border with bases to be able to sort of reinforce this, I guess, security along the border. I'm thinking the Lyrans and the Federation are going to be getting along just fine based on what's coming. And especially considering that they have a diplomacy team on their capital, as you can see here, and I expect there's going to be some more back and forth between them. So everyone's playing nice over on the west side. What else we got here? So we saw that Savannah, which was previously a Kzinti colony, has converted, and we can see that the Diplomat with the frigate just transporting the Diplomat is over the Carnarvon planet that's here, and they are working hard at trying to bring them into the fold. Very interesting that the Federation player is choosing this diplomatic route versus the sort of purely aggressive combat route, but that's nonetheless what's going down here. So not much else to really say there. I mean, the Federation is continuing. You can see these convoys are in position to be able to build sort of like a second tier of bases. Bases not only to be able to fortify the border, but also to be able to facilitate their exploration based on supply. I would expect that they probably still have supply 3, although we are getting into the range, this sort of time frame in the game when people are going to start experiencing increases in supply. So supply is a technology that you can research, and right now many have 3. Sorry, many have supply 3, but soon I think supply 4 is going to start becoming a factor. So we'll see how that evolves as we go forward. Let's roll down to the Tholians. Man, these guys drive me crazy. I'm so competitive. All right, so let's take away the ships because there's a lot of ships. What we can see here is before they had a number of different planets that had been minor factions that had been discovered. As we go sort of like top and around the clock, clockwise, and I'll take away the bases just so you can see them as well. You can see that Terrenia and Highhold and Airy and the Reformed Methanists. Oh my goodness. But either way, these were all different minor factions that have one way or another been brought into the fold. You can see that Tyrannus and this one was a Hydran one. Both of these have been conquered. These ones down below, Highhold and Airy, have been sort of diplomatically absorbed. And you can see that the Gorn, they're trying to do something like that with the Gorn. With 8 fleet here, and I bet you there is a diplomat in and around. Oh, that 8th fleet, sorry, is the Gorn minor faction fleet. But I bet you there's going to be an effort to be able to bring them in the fold with diplomats. Right now, the diplomat is down on this particular ISC planet, a minor planet, which would be a 3 EP bump for the Tholians if they get it. But considering that they are friendly now with a diplomat, chances are that's going to be going their way probably fairly soon. We can also see they have, of course, another Kzinti medium planet that's been discovered down here. They're currently unhappy with, I'm going to say, the Tholians and the Federation, but we'll see how that evolves as we go forward. What's important about this picture? 2 things. 1, the Tholians are economically killing it. The Tholians are without a doubt the strongest economic force in the game, based purely on the planets that they have and the potential growth that they have. They have no known enemies at this point. No one on their borders that is threatening them in any way, shape, or form. They obviously playing nice with the Federation, and they're using that to be able to sort of build up their economic power and stability. One of the things about this player that's very interesting is that and it goes perhaps with the style of play of the Tholians. I don't see this particular player, having known and played with this player a couple times, I don't see him necessarily doing anything that's risky. He sets up himself up for success and then executes only when he's in a position of strength. Now, that's going to come at some point. There's going to be some point when the Tholians get real sort of obscene with what they can do. So we'll see how that goes. But I really sort of draw the attention to all the other players that the Tholians are something to look out for, because as this game evolves, they are going to become a faction to watch. Will be very interesting to see how that evolves as we go forward, but like I say, a faction to watch. All right, so as we go back here, not much else to talk about other than one thing to note is the Orions that are in this space. You've got 3 different Orion bases and, of course, a number of ships there. One of the things that's interesting about Orions, and we'll discuss this in a moment, or sorry, we'll illustrate this in a moment. Orions in this game can be used in a number of different ways. They're a role-playing element, like we have interactions with the GM when it comes to the Tholians. But you can use pirates, you can contract them, purchase them to be able to do things for you. Now, the only way you can do that is if you have an Orion base within supply range of your faction. So, for example, as we were just seeing there in the Tholians, they have within the envelope of their empire, within the reach of their supply, they have a number of Orion bases that are in their space. They could contract Orions, pay for them, to go do various other things for them. They can use their prime teams to do prime team missions. They can use their ships to attack targets. They can use them to defend targets. They can do all sorts of stuff. The use of Orion Pirates is interesting because it is it's plausible deniability, so to speak, in the sense that you don't know who's hiring the pirates, especially if you've got multiple people around you who have access to them. But if you're on the defense, and we'll go to this in a second, I'll illustrate this in a second. The Orions, you can deny access to your opponents to Orions as a plausible option for them to use against you. So we'll discuss that in a moment, actually, as I pull up. We've basically finished with the West Side story. Let's go to the East Side, and we'll go straight into the story between the Romulans and the Klingons, which was the thumbnail for this episode. So as you can see here, I've got the map open between the Klingons and the Romulans. So the Klingons and the Romulans, long story short, are at war. They've been at war for now 2 turns, and this was essentially all the Klingons' fault. The 2 things happened. So before, as you saw in maybe 2 live streams ago, there was no open map between the Romulans and the Klingons. And there was an effort to try and open up the maps and sort of increase that transparency and communication. As soon as the maps opened up, from the Klingon side, we saw that the Romulans were building a base in this hex right here. Now, that hex, which is Charlie Charlie 46, is within supply range of the planet, which is based right here. Now, why is that important? Because we don't have a negotiated border between us, and due to the sort of house rules nature of the game at this point, or sorry, the game that we play, at this point in the game, we don't have a border, and anything within our supply range between us is a valid target. It also sort of predicates that we need to... No, that's not the right way to describe it. When you don't have a negotiated border, there is the potential for war between you when you're within supply range of each other. And so what's happening here is that from the Klingon perspective, we have this planet, nice, juicy, vulnerable target, and the Romulans are building bases within supply reach of that target. The objective here is to push the Romulans back to a point where, and this was offered as a sort of a border before things got really heated, along the Charlie line. So I, as the Klingons, made an offer to the Romulans, make a border along the Charlie line, because that is the 3 supply range from this planet. And that's sort of like the premise behind that border is the 3 hex supply range. Now, obviously, on the Romulan side, they also have 3 hex supply at least, and so from their perspective, maybe that's the Echo line, you know? So I want Charlie, they want Echo. Are we going to settle on Delta? Who knows? We'll see how that goes. But nonetheless, that's sort of the rationale behind what was going on. Also, with the base being located that close to the planet, it becomes a launching point to attack the planet potentially. And the Romulans had a number of fleets, collections of 2 ships, as we discussed before, sort of operating in the area. So if you're paranoid and you're thinking that everyone's out to get you, then you might think that building a base that close to a planet might be not so great. So anyways, long story short, war was started, and we're in the midst of fighting that war, and that's what's going on. Now, let's discuss the big battle that happened. There were a number of little battles that occurred along and in this area right here between the 2 empires, but there was a specific battle as I zoom in on this hex right here in Bravo Bravo 45. Now, if my mouse will play nice, there we go. So you can see that there is a YDK there, and there is a number of ships. So let's patrol in 2nd Legion. Romulan patrol. There we are. And 2nd Legion. Legion 2nd. Okay. Oh, well, there's not really much there to see. Okay, so you can see this, and there's nothing in the patrol box. Okay. So what we can see here is there is currently a number of crippled ships, and then there's, of course, 2nd Legion. So we had a big battle that occurred at this base. Klingons brought a whole bunch of D4s. Those are the cruisers, and F3s. Now, just based on the numbers, this should have been a relatively one-sided affair. The combat effectiveness of both was very similar, but the thing that made the difference was that the Romulan ships are, once they get crippled, and they had a couple crippled ships already, but once they get crippled, their combat effectiveness drops significantly. Now, granted, every ship, once it gets crippled, drops its combat effectiveness, but them more so. For example, a YSN, which is their frigate, when it's crippled, it goes to a 1, and when it's not crippled, it's a 2-3. The 2-3 is the same as Klingon frigates, but when they get crippled, there are 2, just as an example. And there's a number of W-era ships here, which just means that their overall combat and defensive factors are lower. So we had a battle. 2 things that really came out on the sort of advantage of the defender, which was the Romulans. One, they had a Y-era dreadnought, which is the YVUL or Vulture, the Y-era Vulture. So that's a 7-8 ship that you can see here. Woo! That's a potent ship. As a dreadnought in the Y era, that is one of the best, because normally Dreadnoughts are, as you can see with some of the other folks, it's a 6-8 ship. This is a 7-8 ship. So that's pretty potent. In addition, they have their YDK, which has 8 attack, 16 defense, but 16 defense factors, and it can soak up damage in what are referred to as these SIDS, or Starbase Incremental Damage System is the what that acronym stands for. And it just means that in this case, every 4 damage is a sort of a chunk of damage that you can do. So SIDS are accumulated incrementally throughout the battle. But where did this all go sort of like really good for the Romulans was the employment of something called rapid combat repair. Now, this is a rule you can see here in the rule set for Federation Empire. Now, let me just say, if you have never seen this rule set before, never looked at them, it's broken down into these numbers and sections, which makes it really easy to look things up. You can see here, rapid combat repair is rule 425.3. Now, if you'll excuse me while I read it really quickly, I just want to make sure that we understand how this works. So some, in this case, star bases and other units have the ability to repair ships, right? And in some cases, you can use them quickly, although at a higher cost. So bases and certain other facilities can use some of their repair points during the combat phase to repair ships in the same hex. And this is exactly what happened during our combat. The balance of their points must remain for the subsequent repair phase, i.e. the next turn. So we had a battle, and then the following turn, the repair points that they're using are the repair points they would use in the next turn. A starbase might use one of its points after round 2, 2 of its points after round 5, and 4 points after round 6, but it cannot use more than 4 total points during a combat phase, meaning that as a battle progresses, it can incrementally repair ships throughout the battle, but it cannot use more than 4 points of repair in any one phase. And this refers to some different kinds of bases or units that can use this capability. So an uncrippled bats, that's basically a battle station. It's a M-era base that you can build, and an FRD or a PRD. So FRD is a fleet repair dock or a planetary repair dock. Those are units that come way later in the game, not at the era that we're playing right now. Any repair points used during the combat phase are deducted from the capability of the base or dock during the next repair phase. So this battle occurred during turn 49, and now we've got the map for turn 50, which we'll submit. So any and all the repair points that were used during the battle can't be used or take away from their ability to repair this turn. Make sense? And then the cost. Combat repairs cost 1 EP, with the exception of the Gorns. The Gorns have a special combat repair ability for this. But basically, each repair point costs 1 EP. Now, during our battle, I crippled their Vulture. And they used that repair capacity to repair the Vulture and some other ships. So what ended up happening effectively is that I did about 20 points of damage during the battle that were completely soaked up and repaired by either the SIDS, ships that could take it, and or the repair capacity. 20 points of damage that I inflicted without their combat effectiveness changing at all. And of course, during that same period of time, I was taking damage from them, and it didn't work out. So what was the end result? The end result was, and let me switch screens here so we can see the chat as we're going on. One of the key results that happened from this is, what did we see? We saw a very effective use of this technique from the Romulans against the Klingons to be able to hold the line. The Klingons did not destroy that base, even though that, of course, was the objective. They did do 3 SIDS of damage. They did cripple practically the entire fleet, and they caused a lot of damage. Don't get me wrong. Like it was an effective attack. It just didn't accomplish the goal, which was to, of course, eliminate the base. But this was a very effective use of this technique, the battlefield repair, and it also illustrates how how useful this is and how effective this is. Now, one of the things about going through this rule, and the GM and I identified this, only certain bases can use this. One example of a base that cannot use this in the game is, at this stage, is the YBS. So the Y era base station cannot use this repair capacity, only the Y dock. Make sense? So the YDK at this stage of the game can use this sort of in-battle repair capacity. YBSs cannot. So that's big. 2, we saw really illustrated quite clearly here how effectively you can defend something like a YDK with a relatively smaller fleet. Without going into the bare bones numbers, the fleets were relatively equal, but the overall numbers of ships, the Klingons had a few more. And that was designed to be able to soak up some damage and continue to do damage. The big difference here was the delta, or the difference between the W era ships, which had less attack capacity, and the Klingon ships were all Y era. And so the Klingons brought, I would say, disproportionately, like more attack factors to the battle than you might normally expect. But generally speaking, the numbers that came out, especially with the EW shift, because the YDK has EW, it was relatively equal. The determining factor was that ability for the YDK to do repairs in battle or between combat rounds to soak up damage and sort of make the battle last longer. And by doing that, they were able to effectively defend that target, which is huge. So what does this mean for the players in the game? YDKs are hard targets. YDKs with ships to defend it, really hard targets. And you need to bring a disproportionate amount of ships and units to be able to sort of blow things up if that's what you want to do. But really, something to really think about is how you're going to affect that change, how you're going to sort of eliminate that target, something to think about. And for the defending players, something to really think about on your ability to defend it. Think about this repair capacity. Don't get me wrong, it costs money and it takes away from your flexibility to repair the next turn. So for example, those ships that are there basically won't be able to repair. They're going to have to scatter, for lack of a better way to describe it, to repair at other locations. And there's a lot of damage to repair. It's going to cost a lot of EP. However, for that round, for that turn, to defend that target, they did an excellent job. The Romulans did an excellent job of defending that target. So really, really good. So from the sort of general observation, Romulans did an excellent job defending that target. Klingons, unfortunately, weren't able to take it. But it was really, really well done. And so kudos to the Romulan player for effectively doing that. That was really, really good. With that said, let's take a quick look at, I'll zoom out here ever so slightly. And let me just take a quick look at the chat because I haven't spent any attention to the chat. Let's take a quick look at the chat. Dale Davis. Hey, Dale. Welcome to the live stream. I'm going to scroll up and then I'll work my way down. Woo, lots of chitter chatter here. Okay, so let's pick up where Daniel Easton, YDT is a transport. U means it can carry a tug pod, but can't utilize its function. Okay, interesting. So this is theater transport stuff. They can transport pods, but they can't use them. Good. Turn 50 is year 90 Foxtrot. Oh, this is something I wanted to talk about. And we're gonna, and as we go through the EP, we're gonna see how this affected things. On this turn, on this year, planets grew. Maybe there's always an opportunity or a chance that planets are going to grow, and that's depending on how close they are to your homeworld. The proximity to your homeworld dictates how they are going to the closer they are to the homeworld, the greater the chance that they'll grow. And every 10 years or so, or 10 turns, these planets will potentially grow. Colonies into developing into minors into medium, and medium into majors, and that kind of thing. Why is that important? As we were just talking about with the Tholians, they got a lot of planets, so as they go forward, their economy can grow, and it gets, as the planets grow, it gets really sort of exponential, especially if you've got lots of planets in your in your empire close to your homeworld. So that happened this turn, and it was a really big sort of like moment in the sense of like economic shifts can happen. So that happened. So Dale's asking, what year are you guys playing this game? And of course, everyone answered in the chat, year 90 right now. But in the context of perhaps, I'm not sure, Dale, if this is why you're asking it, but in the context of the early era, we're in the W and Y Tech era. Some folks are getting close, I imagine, to M Tech. M Tech, from a nominal year perspective, is 120. But with the research and sort of the tech tree that we have, you can do research and development as you go, and that will allow you to get that technology earlier, if that makes sense. So we're in year 90. And as we get close to year 100, there is a strong likelihood that some folks are going to start getting M-era technology if they've been investing in it early on. But that's when you're probably going to start seeing it show up. All right, Dell. Oh, my goodness. So much more chitter-chatter here. Okay, so Dell, 90. Surely the Mina heresy to erase. I'm not sure what Jim. Oh, my goodness. Jim, by the way, for those of you who are just joining, is the Hydron player, and he's playing a dictatorial theocracy, which is why he keeps referring to heresy in the comments. It's all part of the role play. Chuck is mentioning kill the attacker every time. Yeah. 13 watchers. Okay, we had up to 13 at some point. That's awesome. I wasn't watching that, but thank you for bringing my attention to that. Jim, we may be starting another campaign soon, but this one has its full complement of players currently. This is under constant review and conversation between players and the GM. Yeah, so we had talked about that, I think, in the last live stream, that we've got some stuff that we're cooking up as far as other opportunities for players to play. Because again, we're just here to be able to create this community of players who enjoy playing the game and have fun together. So more campaign info to come in the future. Nothing certain or solid right now, but we are working on potentially another campaign to run concurrently with this one, and we'll see how that goes. Whether that'll show up on the live stream, I don't know. We'll have to talk about it, but as we go, we shall see. All right, so that's the chitter chatter. Let's ride back into the east side. I'm going to zoom in here and head over to the Gorn just before. And of course, move my head. Look at that. I am absolutely in the way. Let's do a quick EP. This is the entire map for the east side. So this should be everybody involved. All right. So as we look at the Carnivon have a 33.5 EP economy. The Gorn, 32.5. Love to see that because the Gorn have up to now been sort of struggling on the EP front. Nice to see that they are basically par for the course. You remember the Federation and the Lyrans are both hovering around 32, so it's nice to see that the Gorn are in that same ballpark as well. Hydrons are flying high with 36 EP. The Klingons are at 38.5, and that's all because of planets. I'll show you that in a second. The Remans are at 36, and the Romulans are at 32.5. Very, very interesting. Okay, let's look at the fleet cap numbers. There we go. Bring that over here. All right, so we can see that the Carnivons, oh man, they have such a big fleet. Crazy. The Carnivons, 38 ship equivalents with an 89-174 split. You can see that the Gorn, 26 ships with 52-105. So that's a pretty good split in the sense that you're basically seeing whatever their number of ships are, double it. That's their attack factor. That really goes to show you how ineffective the WR ships are for the Gorn, but as they start pumping out more and more and more of these YR ships, you're going to see that number hockey curve up. The Hydrons, 44 ship equivalents with a 99-185 split. They are about to crack 100. Very, very interesting. Lots of ships for obviously with the Hydrons. They are a big bad force. The Klingons have 39 ship equivalents with an 86-137, considering we lost about 4 ships in the last encounter. That could have been higher, but obviously, you're going to lose some ships in war, so that's the way that goes. 39 ship equivalents, 86-137 split. The Remans, Wow! 52 ships and a 157-210 split when it comes to their attack and defense factors. They're the first faction to break 200 for the defense factors, and with 150 attack factors, they are by far the deadliest faction in the game. I skipped over the ISC. I apologize. ISC with 27 ship equivalents, 77, 130 split. Now, the ISC recently had a sort of a stomping of a minor faction. We'll cover that in a moment. Okay, so let's look at the Gorn here. Again, when it comes to the Gorn, they are continuing sort of the steady as she goes approach, continuing to explore around the edges. You can see that with 4th and the Expeditionary Fleet. They're continuing to explore, obviously discovering more resources. You can see that they have ships on the west side here doing the same thing. And particularly interesting is so they've built a base on this wormhole. They've sent a ship through. We'll show that in a second. But they've got their home fleet. So Gorn home fleet. Let's just take a look. You can see the Gorn home fleet is sort of like where all their meat and potatoes are. They've got their DN. So we're talking about the Vulture for the Romulans being a 7-8. That is probably the best dreadnought in the game. The YDN for the Gorn is a 6-8 by comparison. The YCC, YCLs, and YDD. So basically, this is an entire Y fleet, and you can see they've got the 3-5, 3-5, 2-4, and 2-3 splits here. This again just goes to the Gorn ships at the early era of the game just aren't as punchy as they are later. But wait for it, in M era, which is the next tech level after this, they get sick. And in going into GW, it's obscene. But they are expensive. That's the thing. You can see that the Romulans are sending an R&D team to swap tech potentially with the Gorn. And we can see the Gorn, obviously, they have an R&D team there as well. The swap back and forth to be able to facilitate that. We still have the Carnivon YDD floating around in Romulan space. And that's good. Again, not much else to discuss here, just that this is going on. I will take a second here and we'll go and show you where... Oh, I got to zoom out here. Where that, I can't show you where because it's on the very edge of the map and it's right over here past this, this Orion here. Can I do this? All right. So moving the map over like this, you can see that this frigate has popped up on the very edge of the map of the Hydron space. What's important about that? One, it's a two-way wormhole. That's killer. Once they are able to research and develop the technology to be able to provide supply through there, that'll be an interesting avenue to be able to send stuff to the Hydrons. It'll be sort of interesting to see that dynamic and to see how the Hydrons play nice or not nice with the Gorn will be interesting to see. So we'll see how that goes as the story evolves. All right, so we already talked about the Romulans and the Klingons. Long story short, Romulans, let's just take away their bases and ships for a sec. So as you can see here, there's only a colony here, but it's close to their home world. So that would have been sort of the candidate for growth. But you can see that the majority of their resources are all predominantly just individual resources, not a lot of planets. As we go over to the Klingon side, you can see that there are a few more planets. The thing to note is Felis Prime and Fenris Omega. These two were colonies and grew into developing planets, which is why they went from 1 EP to 2. That's the difference. Everything else is sort of been conquered. So the development of those planets is ongoing. Once they come online, so to speak, once they're no longer devastated, you'll see the economy pick up a little bit. But again, at this stage of the game, they're just in a position where they're only providing 1 EP, not the full. In the case of these 2 minor planets, not the full 3 that they would normally provide. All right, let's bring back those bases. We already talked about the Klingon side here. Not much else to tell. The big sort of highlight was the battle with the Romulans. You'll notice that there's a bit of a stack here on the border. One thing that happened here was in this hex right here, there was an Orion base. Now, I said I was going to talk about Orions really quickly. If you look at, as we go up to the Carnarvon map, and I'll move my head out of the way, you will notice that there are no other Orion bases within the supply range of the Carnarvon, meaning that while that base existed, they could theoretically contract Orions to be able to attack me. And I know, although I won't discuss all the attacks that I received, there were some Orion operations that targeted me this last turn. And I had in my contingency orders that my forces would attack and destroy any Orion bases that were within, basically it was this one base, to be able to destroy them if folks were using Orions against me. And that was the case, so I destroyed it. Now, the good thing is that Orion base, like I say, attacks against me. It eliminates the ability for the Carnarvons to be able to use Orions against me at this point. Chances are they'll probably do it again in the sense that they'll have an opportunity to have an Orion pop up in their space. But at least in the short term, no more Orion operations against me at this time, which is good. But like I say, it's a bit of a pain in the butt, so to speak. I've eliminated them, and so those ships are now based on this base station here, and we can see that going. The big thing on the border with the Klingons is the buildup of the Carnarvon fleet. Now, the Carnarvons are, without a doubt, and let me zoom in so I can fully sort of illustrate where these guys are. The Carnarvon are one of the strongest sort of concentration of ships in the game, and the Carnarvons have, there we are. The Carnarvons have Den Fleet, which is this bad boy right here, and then Home Fleet here. Now, not to be alarmist, but look at that. So Den Fleet, which is the smaller one here, it's nothing to sneeze at. It's certainly not life-threatening, but it's significant. You've got these, it looks like a battle cruiser, which is, I am assuming, what the 4.5 is. You've got normal Y-era CAs, Y-era DDs, a commando ship, and frigate. So this is not the kind of fleet that you're going to throw into a position to invade, but it's definitely one that will defend effectively. This one, the Home Fleet, that's the invasion fleet, right? Look at that. 2 of these YCCs. 2 of those bad boys. You've got 5 YCAs. You've got 3 of these drone bombardment ships, 2 destroyers, and another 6 frigates. That's crazy. Those 2 fleets together present, I would refer to it as an existential threat to the Klingons. Not only that, and this is a particularly interesting point, the Carnarvons, so let's just remove the ships for a sec. Remember what we talked about when we were discussing the border that we had designed or agreed to with the Carnarvons. Now, the border ran from Mike 38 here all the way down to Sierra, then down and this way. This planet and this planet are both very clearly on the Klingon side of that border. But as we bring back bases and ships, you'll notice they sent a ship with a diplomat across the border. There was no discussion, no dialogue, no asking for permission to cross the border, because regardless of whether that planet, and don't get me wrong, that planet has sort of exercised its own neutral zone around that area, it is very clearly on the Klingon side of the border that was previously agreed to. Now, of course, what am I going to do about that? They've got existential threats sitting on my doorstep. There's nothing I can do about it, really. So, it's one of those situations where, are you really going to say something? We'll see. So, I mean, it creates true gunboat diplomacy as you're trying to negotiate the interaction between these factions. The Carnarvon player, I will be very interested to see how our diplomatic discussions continue to go forward. It'll be very interesting to see how that works out. So, yeah. Anyway, let's zoom out real quick. So as we look at the Carnivons, we were talking about the Carnivons. The big sort of news on our side is that they've moved their fleets not towards the faction I referred to as Flaming Dragon, Red Dragon on the map here. That was my Tropic Thunder reference. They're not moving them towards that. They're moving them towards me, which is threatening, alarming, something of interest, somewhere in between there, something to think about. Also, in addition, they've got a YD, a tug here, and various other sort of ships providing supply and opportunity to be able to do stuff. It looks like they're going to build up defenses along the border. I expect if the, well, we'll just see how things go. It's, shall we say, tensions are rising along the Carnivon border. We'll see. As we move up, we talked about, you can see the fringes of that wormhole on the side there. The rest of it's pretty much grayed out, fog of war hexes. But with the Hydrons, what do we have here? Some very, very interesting developments. Let's just take away the ships for a sec. We can see the distribution of their bases, you know, relatively, I'll say relatively chaotic, because that's sort of how the Hydron base building is going. You can see there is a 2-hex sort of infrastructure that's going on here along the sort of the narrow line. So potentially there'll be another base in Papa 29 and Oscar 31 and November 32 if that continues. Not a lot of activity along the border with the Hydrons, but certainly a lot of activity sort of on their western front. They've finally explored the hex with this wormhole in it, which is where the Tholians came from. And as we bring back ships and bases, you can see they've got a triad team, an escort frigate, which is the Vol, and the WSR, which is their survey ship. They obviously destroyed the Klingon faction that was here and are continuing to explore sort of to the east, or sort of to the west. One of the key things that has been mentioned more than once is that the Hydrons are looking to eradicate the heresy, and in their mind, the heresy is the Klingon Empire. Well, it was initially the Tholians, but as the banter goes back and forth between the Hydrons, or sorry, between the players in our Discord channel, the Klingons end up being quite the focus. So it's very interesting. There's a dynamic that's being set up here where sort of the newer players are ganging up on the more veteran players, which is very interesting to me. And so we'll see how that goes. I would argue that the Hydrons are a very significant threat in the game. We'll see how this works out. But a couple things to note. One, they still have impounded the Tholian ship that you can see here. They've also impounded this Romulan ship, or at least the Romulan ship hasn't gone anywhere. And of course, this is the thing I keep pointing out, lots and lots and lots. Oh, I didn't bring back bases. That's probably why. Lots and lots and lots, YDK, of Orion bases in their space. So there's a lot of Orion activity. The hub of scum and villainy in the galaxy is really coming from the Hydrons. They are the focal point, the center of all things piracy, which I find very, very interesting. But that being said, their concentration of fleets is such that they are going to be probably sending, and as you can see with this survey ship, focusing this angle of approach of exploration down towards essentially me. And I think that they're going to be trying to basically come for me in some way, shape, or form. Particularly interesting considering that there's the Romulan and Carnivons bordering me right now. We'll see how this all works out, but it'll be very interesting. Also to note is the middle of the map is the Bravo column, and that's the center of the galaxy. There is this narrative from the GM that there is something special in the center of the galaxy. So different factions have motivation or none to move towards the center of the galaxy and see what happens. It'll be interesting to see if and when the Hydrons do that, what they see and what they find. All right, let's take a look at the... Oh, interesting. Okay, so the The ISC, the big thing for the ISC this turn was their attack on the Paravian fleet, which is here. Now, let's look at Owl Fleet real quick, and we can see that Owl Fleet has 2 crippled ships, a DD and a YCA. They also have 1 SID's worth of damage on the YBS that's there. So when we talk about SIDS, that's the incremental damage system, Starbase incremental damage system. And in the context of this, the YBS has 2 SIDS of 4 damage each, which makes up the 8 for its defense factors. And then, of course, 1 when it cripples, because it'll be a 2-4 at that point. So they've done basically 4 points of damage to the base. They crippled the fleet that was there. Law and enforcement. Let's pull up the ISC. Once I can see it, there we are. The ISC named echelons. And we can see here that, we'll put it over here. There we go, we'll put it there. So we can see that there's enforcement and law fleet. So enforcement fleet, no cripples. Law fleet, no cripples. Interesting. So no cripples currently in those 2 fleets. And I think that next turn, especially enforcement has a CC, CL, 2 of these commando cruisers, and law fleet has a YCL. So not a lot of ships, but certainly enough to be able to pop a YBS, and those crippled ships aren't going to provide much of a deterrent. As well as they also have Truth Fleet within striking distance. Truth Fleet has, you can see here, a crippled light cruiser, but the YCA and the YDD, if they add that to the mix, certainly going to be able to take that. So I expect that the IC are going to see a little economic bump next turn as they end up taking that particular planet. Also, we can see here the exchange of R&D between the Remans and the IC. Very nice to see. The IC continue their exploration, you can see here, out to the the east, with Judge and Order fleets. Those are those named echelons, continuing to explore. And you can see it's paying off because they're getting more of these resources discovered here, as well as the continued push to the west, as the Pet Shop Boys say, go west. And they are continuing to do that. We can see, if we take away the ships real quick, the supply is going to become their biggest constraint. We can see that they are currently operating at the edge of their supply, and so I expect that this tug here will build a base, and then they will continue to push to the west. I feel like I need like a button to like tag the Go West sample from that song. I'm gonna have to do that, or find a way to do that. Okay, so what have we done? We've covered the Roms, the Gorn, the Klingons, the Carnivons, the Hydrons, the ISC. And we'll get into the Remans here in a second, but there's stuff I want to talk about with the Remans. Before I do that, let's go back to the chat real quick. And let's go, oh my goodness, so much stuff here. Okay. So much. All right, let's dive in here. Okay, so Bill Linton is here. Guess I'm no longer at the bottom of the EP list, he says. He forgot the ISC, poor Paul. Okay. Do you guys have a Discord? So yes, New Worlds. So one of the Patreon support tiers allows access to our Discord channel, where we have role-playing stories about our campaign, chat to players via text and voice when we're online. So yeah, if you're interested in our Discord channel, then there's 2 ways you can do that. One, you can head over to the Ko-fi link that you can see right there. And when you head over there, there's 2 ways you can support us. You can either send us a one-time coffee. I'm waiting for that photon fire sound effect. Or you can purchase a tier, which is a sort of a monthly support package. And one of those support packages allows you access to our Discord channel. In addition, if you want to go the Patreon route, it's basically the same idea. And we have that structured in the same way, whether it's coffee or Discord, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but now they're both aligned to reflect the same value proposition for both. And so if you want to join our Discord channel, there's a tier on either Patreon and or Ko-fi that you can check in on and join us on our Discord channel. So thank you so much for asking about that. Some bottom twitching being shown here, methinks. Twitching. I'm not sure what that means. We come in peace, Daniel says. Jim, Tholians are the first heresy or the old heresy. The shoot first, talk last Klingons are the second or new heresy. So I'm questioning, this is a question to Jim, if the shoot first, talk second Klingons are your second heresy, you already stomped those Klingons, and arguably those Klingons have nothing to do with these Klingons. So I'm curious what your connection is there. Because, of course, those Klingons have nothing to do with me, or do they? I mean, if they do, then maybe I should be offended. We'll see. Okay, Orion Space, Dell saying, stomping time. Bill, I think you got it wrong. Tony, that's not Hydron Space with Orions. It's Orion Space with the Hydrons. True, so true. All right, let's jump into the Riemann map, because the Riemanns are going to get exciting here in a moment. Okay, so my head can't go over any further, but you can see here, if I can, there we go. So we can see here the Riemanns, again, keep track of who the Riemanns are. They are one of the strongest economies in the game. They are the strongest, biggest, baddest fleet in the game. And you can see here there is this very concerted effort of a westerly direction of exploration. They currently have, I'm sure there's a base being built here soon. So I don't see a base being built, probably because they're using their convoy to extend their supply to do the search. Or maybe they have supply being offered through the Orions, which 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is interesting. Either the Riemanns have supply 4, which I think we theorized that they do. We theorized in a past live stream that they did, or they're using the Orions to be able to facilitate supply. Either way, there's a lot of reach they got here, and they're going into the Bravo column. Now, remember what we were saying about the boom, new donation from the Hydron. Thank you, Jim, for your donation and support for our caffeination. So let's just take a quick look at the Lyran map versus the Riemann map and see the comparison here. The Lyrans have explored up to Bravo 6 to Bravo 9, and they're in the Bravo column. We go back to the Riemann map, and they have explored into Bravo 7 and Bravo 8. They are in the Bravo column. These two are ready to bump into each other. It's just a matter of time. When they do, what happens, we shall see. That may explain why the Lyrans are a little backed off when it comes to their supply reach. We'll see. Keeping in mind, once these two factions touch each other and there is an interaction with supply, the maps will open up and it'll be one big giant map. That may be coming sooner rather than later. We shall see. But nonetheless, as for right now, each side doesn't get to see what the other one's looking at. It's going to be very, very interesting. It's all about controlling information, and we'll see how that goes. All right, so long story short, we see them continuing to explore and expand along their southwestern border. We can see that along here, along the border with the ISC. They are continuing to sort of ever so casually close out the fog of war hexes on that last little bit up by the ISC border. We can see the exploration cruisers and freighters continuing to push this sort of, what do we want to call this? This arm of exploration that they're going towards the Lyrans. I expect shortly there will be some base building to be able to support a push west. Again, Pet Shop Boys. We're going to push that going west, and we're going to see an interaction between the Lyrans and the Riemanns at some point soon. If I'm the Lyran player, I'm looking to get some ships and some reinforcements sort of in that area ASAP. But maybe he's just looking to sort of establish his borders. I don't know. We'll see how this goes. Lots of, again, interaction going on here. We have bases being constructed. They're going to continue to push west. Like I say, I'm thinking there's got to be a base that's going to be built here sooner rather than later. We'll see. But overall, not much else has changed on the Riemann map. What are the big Riemann highlights? They continue to build the biggest, baddest fleet in the game, bar none. And they are continuing to explore and push to the west, looking for some interaction with some kitty cat. Do they have the catnip to make that happen? I don't know. We shall see. I know that the player for the Remans is looking forward to interacting with some players. Yeah, we'll see how this goes. It'll be very, very interesting. All right, let's switch over to the chat once more. I see some comments about Remans and Romulans. Dale's asking, Remans? I don't remember them in the original game. No. So as a quick reminder, we have, as a homebrew faction or a homebrew game, we've added, and we're continuing to work on this, but basically we've added a alternate Romulan faction, which are the Klingon ships in the original game. So in the Romulan, we had the Kestrel ships, which are basically all Klingon hulls with Romulan outfit or Romulan weapon fits. That's not the right way to describe that. Either way, Klingon Romulan ships. And so we've identified them or created a new faction called the Remans, and that's the faction that you see. Hence the sort of combination of the Romulan and Klingon color pattern, and that's how that goes going forward. So Jim is explaining that in the chat, created from the Klingon supply Kestrel ships to create the Reman faction. Reman just being alt-Roms. Romulans using Klingon resale ships. That would be cheating. Jim, interaction, Klingon code speak for, did someone say catnip? Well, considering there's quite a few cat owners in our group here, I understand how mentioning catnip gets everybody excited. So that is basically the round table or the turn 50 reveal at this point. Very exciting to see how this game is evolving. What we see going from the east side to the west, we've got the Remans up top looking for some action with potentially encountering the Lyrans, probably in the next, I don't know, 5 to 6 turns. There might be some interaction. We'll see. It's a matter of whether the Lyrans and the Remans build bases within proximity of each other so they can see each other's ships and start interacting in some way. Whether that interaction is going to be hot and heavy or whether it's going to be more calm and cool, we shall see. As we go down, of course, we talked about the ISC. The ISC are killing it with their continuous exploration. Their economic progression is steady and consistent. They're going to take out those Paravians probably next turn. The Hydrons, wow. Hydrons are, as far as a faction in the game that is doing well, I would say the Hydrons are near the top of the stack. They are nearly, they're at the top tier of the economies. They are by far one of the largest number of ships as far as fleets. They have seemingly no legitimate threats facing them. ISC and them are playing friendly. It seemed that the Carnivons and them are playing friendly, and there's no threat to their infrastructure or how they're building their empire out. Basically, their unencumbered exploration is sort of their policy and execution and how that's working, and it seems to be working out very well for them. They have got lots of ships, lots of space, and they're continuing to push west. Or maybe southwest because they're looking for some Klingons to stomp. That seems to be the trend. As we look to the Carnivons are seemingly stacking up ships on the border with the Klingons. Now, the question is, are they actually going to fight the Klingons? I don't know. There might be a little bit of a border skirmish, like maybe they're going to flex their military might to be able to get a border concession or something. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work, but nonetheless, they're going to... very obviously, they're going to do something with that fleet. The question is how or what are they going to do and how are they going to do it? We'll see how that goes forward. Nonetheless, it's going to be very interesting to see how this evolves because they have one of the biggest concentration of ships in the game. The Klingons continue to sort of ruffle feathers all the way around, as it is the case with the rising tensions with the Carnivons and, of course, with the Romulans. In full transparency, I'm trying to sort of smooth things out with the Romulans. I'm just looking for a border concession. We don't seem to be seeing eye to eye, but we'll see how that negotiation continues. At the end of the day, it's all about establishing good borders and making sure that we're all sort of happy and secure in our positions. But we'll see how that goes forward. I mean, again, the Romulans did a really good job at defending that particular YDK, and how that goes forward, we shall see. The question is really, it's a combination of competency, which the Romulans have demonstrated a high degree of in being able to execute combat and war, and as well as sort of like attitude and sort of general strategy in the game. What do they want to do? We'll see. We'll see. Like I say, continuing to try and push for peace. Well, just depends on how the players want to play together. The Romulans continuing to do their thing with the Gorn. Looks like some good collaboration going on there and some research and development. The Gorn continue to expand, steady as she goes, so to speak. The Tholians are the, I would say, silent but violent faction in the game, almost kind of like the Hydrons, but the Tholians are definitely growing in their economic and military might without any opposition whatsoever. When the Hydrons and the Tholians meet at some point, that will be interesting to see. So, yes. Whether that's going to be through a wormhole or whether they're actually going to bump heads in the middle of the map, I don't know. It'll be interesting to find out. And then, of course, the Feds and the Lyrans. Well, we know the Lyrans and the Remans are waiting to touch, and once they do, sparks will fly in one way or another. But the Federation seem to be pretty calm, cool, collected, hence that blue, tranquil color, and they are riding this game out, being very Federation and, diplomatic about it all, playing nice with their neighbors and slowly but surely expanding. It would seem as though, although they had some bad luck at some point, they are continuing to expand and explore, and like Bill said in the comments, no longer the bottom of the economic barrel, so to speak. So, very interesting to see how these things are going. Will the Romulans end up winning, losing, or coming to some agreement when it comes to the Klingon-Romulan War? Would the Klingons get ganged up on and get destroyed by a Carnarvon-Romulan alliance or something else that's going on? Who knows? Will the Hydrons finally find their... somebody finally grow a spine and go up against the spineless Hydrons? I say that because, of course, they're like tentacular, like octopus or squid. So are we actually someone gonna challenge the Hydrons and take them for what they got? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see how that goes. And then the ISC, of course, continue to expand and explore, and the Remans just looking for a target to pick. What's going to happen next? I don't know. We'll find out in the next live stream. Please join us there. If you enjoy this kind of content, you like seeing what we do here, you enjoy the story and the evolving sort of campaign, then please consider subscribing to the channel if this is something you like, especially if you've stayed with us this long. If you enjoy this content and are willing to support it, then please consider hitting that, hitting that coffee link to provide us a quick little caffeine boost, or perhaps you want to hit the Patreon or the coffee to be able to support us at an ongoing monthly basis. Any and all support is greatly appreciated. Again, thanks to James for subscribing. Thanks for our folks over at Patreon who stayed with us and now can see the retooled Patreon outlook. And for all of you for joining us here live or catching us on the replay, thank you so much for your time, your attention, your support. We're just trying to build this community of people who like to play this game, have fun, and enjoy all things sci-fi and Trek. So thank you so much for everybody for joining us. I really am looking forward to the next turn. And of course, leave your comments below, not only in the chat, but tell me what's going on next for you, what you want to see, the Klingons, the Romulans, the Hydrons, any of the factions. What do you want to see them do? How do you want to see them stir the pot? You tell me. Really interested to see and hear what it is that you want to see in this game. With that said, I think that's it for now. I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.